Spéciale dédicace à tous les jeunes du Caillou et ça c'est de la part de Jurons de la PSM Killa. SOCA Sunday. How we doing, everybody? It's your boy C.I.P. It's another SOCA Sunday. How we doing? Mic check. A-Team Reaper. I see y'all out there. All right, today we are back in St. Lucia. We're back home. Today, SOCA Sunday is all about history. Cuzzo, how you doing? Good to see you. We are looking at history from the beginning of time to the early 1900s or the early 20th century. We are also going to take a brief second just to look at some news, some good news. It's always good to see things on the education front for the youth on the island. So we'll be looking at a little bit of news. Then we'll get into the history. The history is going to take up the bulk of the day, y'all. It's going to be a history day. Little entertainment, a whole lot of knowledge. Something that has been a popular request and something that I think you will find very, very interesting, especially those in the diaspora that are curious about how the slave trade was documented in part, right? History is we're only able to tell history based on how much we are given, right? And how much was recorded. And then we always have things like paper genocide where records just weren't kept at all. But we have a wonderful, wonderful guide through the history today. The channel is Untold Stories. He is a Lucian cousin, of course. All Lucians are cousins as far as your boy C.I.P. is concerned. It's good to see you, Joan. It's good to see you, 12. How are you, sis? All right. Your boy is still setting a couple things up. Hope you enjoy the music. Here's a link for you. I'm going to go ahead and drop that in the chat. Go subscribe to the brother, and we'll talk about him a little bit in a moment here. Let's get the show started.
Averaging a peak. Once you pull up in this when the killing will begin, you feel me pulling up your skin. I really came to get in and deliver murder grant.
In St. Lucia, we don't like boring girls. Do not bend your back like a shrimp either.
When the girl them
Put the arch in your back.
Then we girl them
Yeah. Lucian girl them. Everybody, 1, 2, go. Push up. One position.
them is thing that if you rock bend me between that.
Hold on, show me how to take that if you're
Rock bend when I think that. Position them is thing that if you rock bend me between
Jeez.
that. Show me how you can take
I I talking to you.
You not bad in English.
You girl, not bad in Spanish, but you.
Whoa, I want to be free like a bird. Down the line.
We drink and we drum.
Where the brethren, Mrs. Trent, when they dance them. 4, 3, 2, 1. With grace and with faith in the morning, with chains and oil. I am a backpack and energy. Rum in the backpack and energy. Promoter done laughing already with the backpack and energy.
And only a true love's kiss can awake the princess from her dream.
There she is.
She's been dreaming of a true love's kiss. I'm here to be the one that she can miss.
Oh gosh, boy, I tried to sleep.
You up?
Well, I'm not up anymore. What's it that stupid singing in my ears, boy? I tried to sleep.
I'm here to save you. I'm here to kiss you and save you.
You need to save your lips. Go put some Vaseline on your lips or something and come out of my place. How you get in my place anyway?
Your back door was open. I hope them give me back gas
Jealous
money.
this boy. I tried to sleep out true love, and at last I see what kind of stupid is. I was dreaming about my prince and they sent an ogre.
Go and clean your room, boy. I said, go and clean your room, boy. Now, before let's jump onto our wicked, let's take it to the beginning. All right, that's something who they just do listen. Then, please go and clean your room.
No.
Well, here what? I've developed a plan. This plan has 5 steps. Step 1, grab a trusty flashlight. Step 2, equip yourself with a yard slippers. Every train should have one. Step 3, go in the bush. You can go by yourself or with a search party. Make sure it's a real grass and you hang cricket and ribbit. I tell you, we're looking for a big one, right?
Yeah.
A committed team. This carries us to step 4. Go under your local mango tree. Wait. On to step 5, capture.
Hey, seeing it, boy?
I'm gonna lie, that frog had some speed, so you know how to turn into prime Indian mode.
I've been roaming around, always looking down at all I see.
Doggy, why wait? Doggy, get
You know, a successful capture indeed. This brings us to my favorite step, execute. I will show you how to deal with people like she. Please go and clean your room. Hey, boy, I say go and clean your room, boy. I say go and clean your room, boy. Go and clean, hey, you clean your room? You clean your room? You clean your room? Okay, good. Very good. Good girl. For character development, feel free to add generational trauma. It's attitude you giving me? If the trend extra hardened, hold on to it just a little bit longer. And that is how you deal with rude churn.
I don't give a shit, dude. I don't give a shit, dude.
Bode uduva mwede.
What means?
God, you in front, I behind. Bode uduva mwede. God, you in front, I'm behind you. Some patois.
I say, c'est mon camène comme un régime. J'ai d'abord voulu mourir.
Petit garçon là, Guinard, il va connaître patois.
You can speak patois? Ah ouais, I can speak patois. You can. There's one thing they kind of failed us in Dominica is putting patois in schools.
Stop speaking patois.
Because I hear you speaking French like me.
Patois.
Once upon a time, patois was the first language of most inhabitants of this island. So what happened?
They want us to learn all kind of language. Spanish, French, all Dutch, Chinese. I hope you understand
in the endeavor to promote the patois language. Et puis créole c'est patois, patois c'est créole, créole c'est patois jodia.
Even avant créole nous supposé qu'à parler patois. Patois pas blesser pièce.
Shout out to that intro. Shout out to that intro. Jamaicans, I know you are going through some things right now, but we as Caribbeans always have a sense of humor. Let's go.
3 miles down the road is the Yalas River. Residents were forced to pay between $250 and $500 to cross, as transportation was restricted to either a heavy-duty vehicle or being lifted across.
Right now, nobody can cross it. It's only who can understand it. Cross it. Nobody can cross it. It's only fisherman and a fisherwoman. Trust me. Nobody can cross it. It's only who can manage the water. It's only something come over. Or if we around to help them. Nobody can swim. If you cannot swim, you cannot cross it. Nobody can cross it if we around to hit them over. Fisherman can cross it, and a fisherwoman cross it. Cannot swim, trust me. You're going to St. Thomas. One. Nobody can cross it. It's only who understand it. Cross it. Nobody can cross it. It's only fisherman and a fisherwoman. Trust me. Nobody can cross it. It's only who can manage the water. It's only something come over. Or if we around to help them.
Not all the vehicles
can cross it.
This vehicle
cannot cross it. We lock away in the wilderness. Nobody cross it. Cross. Yesterday, the bus was coming from town. A bus to the people. Just the mercy of God. Why the bus don't go over? The bus can't swim.
The bus can't swim.
Bus can't swim.
Believe it or not,
the bus can't swim. Yesterday, the bus was coming from town. The bus can't cross it. The last time, hurricane, dead up to bury up the top.
Nobody know for walk.
The bus can't swim.
Nobody know for walk.
The bus can't cross it. Nobody can cross it. The only who can understand it. Cross it. Nobody can cross it. It's only fisherman and a fisherwoman. Trust me. Nobody can cross it. The only who can manage the water. It's only something come over. Or if we around to help them.
I'm very concerned.
Because nobody can cross it. Not even the kids them can go to school. Trust me. Because nobody can cross it. Fisherman and a fisherwoman can cross it like them. Understand it. Stand it. Cannot swim. Trust me. You're going to dead up. Nobody can cross it. The only who can understand it. Cross it. Nobody can cross it. It's only fisherman and a fisherwoman. Trust me. Nobody can cross it. The only who can manage the water. It's only something come over. Or if we around to help them. Nobody can cross it. Nobody cross it. The only who can swim. Cross it. Cross it. Cross. No. Nobody cross it.
Dara Smith, TVJ News.
Yo, big up all the sexy ladies and all.
Shake up your bam bam. Shake up your bam bam.
Get ready to vibe. Introducing Play It, the ultimate SOCA 2025 mixtape by DJ Kai.
What's
Buckle up
up
for
to
a
all my
high
beautiful
energy
people from
ride.
all corners of the world? We got DJ Kai in the background, of course.
international bookings,
We will be
contact
jamming.
DJ Kai
There will be good
official at
vibes.
gmail.com. Let's
Y'all,
play it
how you like
loud
that
and
intro?
She have a big bam 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 bam.
Your boy is out of control this weekend. Let me tell you, your boy's out of control. But as always, it's a little bit of entertainment mixed in. So I had to do it. And then, of course, we rounded everything off with a little patois and bringing everything home, which is where we're going to be today. Last week, rather, not yesterday, but last week, we were up north and we were digging deep into the history of the Taino Arawak from the Northern Caribbean, as well as our cousins from Puerto Rico. We'll be going back north soon, but we're back down south to talk history this week, right? As by popular demand, and I owe it to myself to dig into my own history. The Arawaks, two African slaves to the early 20th centuries, what we'll be covering today. And again, shout out to all of you who are here for the culture, knowledge, and entertainment. Give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you so much. 12, Michael. I got my cousin out here as well. We've got A-Team. We've got Reaper. Joan, how is life, sweetheart? How are you? And hey, I can't slack. I got to give all the beautiful ladies some riz. Ooh la la, ah wee wee for all the ladies. Gents, shada. Let's go. All right. So today, a little bit of news. And then we're going to get into the main event. We're going to dive right into the history, you guys, because it's going to be a long history piece. All right. We're going to spend about an hour with our friend, Untold Stories. Untold Stories SLU. Anyone who knows the SLU, St. Lucia, he is from the island and he does a very, very, very good job. High production value. My brother, do not strike me. We are only using your content for fair use. We are cousins from the same beautiful mother island. All right. So, first up is our boy Untold. But we're going to talk about... we pause the music for a moment. We're going to talk about something that I find to be quite interesting and I think is a good thing in the long run to keep the culture on the island rich and tied to our cultural roots. This was just dropped, I think, 4 days ago. Full screen. Hold on 1 second. I think this was 4 days ago. Yeah, a couple days ago. All right, news from the island. Let's go.
Creole Heritage Month shines a spotlight on the richness of St. Lucia's culture, particularly the Creole language, which the Ministry of Education is working to include in the school syllabus. Stakeholders say preserving the language through education is key to ensuring it is not lost in history. Curriculum Officer for Modern Languages, Jessena Cooper, explains the progress made so far.
In 12 primary schools around the island. And this pilot program is taking place in those primary schools with teachers who have been formally trained to teach the Creole language. So we're looking at the linguistic competence. So they studied the Creole language. They were taught to speak, to write.
Cooper noted that the project is currently in its pilot stage, being implemented across 12 primary schools. Following assessment, the ministry plans to introduce a full Creole teaching unit. She thanks stakeholders for their continued support and urges parents to speak the language at home to help children become more familiar with it.
Our cultural heritage has always been part of the curriculum, the school's curriculum across all subjects, basically. And one of the major aspects that we have seen that has caused the Creole language to really survive is being part of our cultural identity.
The long-held stigma that Creole is a lesser language has faded. Even celebrated literary figures like Sir Derek Walcott used it proudly in their work. The Ministry of Education says it will continue to foster cultural pride and create holistic learning experiences that bring students closer to their St. Lucian identity. For the DBS News World, Manasseh Stanislas reporting.
Your boy thinks that is a smart move in the right direction. Absolutely. So shout out to them. That's one thing that should not be lost is national identity and the heritage.
Yes, we having a good time.
That is one thing. Yes, the kids look absolutely adorable, 12. Absolutely adorable. And Cuzzo, you just returned. I love to hear it. I love to hear it. I plan to go down beginning of next year, so I'll be streaming and providing all kinds of content while I'm down there as well. I think I'm going to go down for Jazz Fest and then some business I have to attend to as well. So welcome to the show, everyone. That was our first little news break. We are going to get right into the history because it's going to be a long, long historical perspective today. Your boy C.I.P. is armed with coffee. Please grab yourself a beverage, grab yourself a snack, sit back, relax, enjoy the day. It's a beautiful day too. I'm here with you. I could be out riding the bicycle. You know, I have the bicycle, but I'm here with you guys today because I really, really wanted to share this. As always, this is a hobby for me. I'm here because I love it. I love to share the art. I love to share the culture, right? So next up, untold stories. As mentioned, our brother from St. Lucia, our cousin from the beautiful, beautiful island, has many, many untold stories and perspectives of news and politics and the ever-changing face of the island itself and how things, how the island addresses certain things, atrocities, in fact, in some cases. So, I highly suggest subscribing to the gentleman. We are going to dive into today the untold story, the history of St. Lucia. DJ Kai, you're doing your thing, bro, but we gotta put you on pause for a little while. All right. Let's go back here. All right, family, friends and family. Let's get into it. Like I said, this is going to be a 56-minute, and again, it is the history of Saint Lucia. So let's go. Very well produced piece, by the way.
History is a guide to navigate in perilous times. The past dictates who we are and why we are the way we are. It is rather reprehensible that when handed history in its accurate, well-researched form, packaged and palatable so that a fifth grader could digest and a 50-year-old could appreciate, the visionaries who fight to go down in history make little, no, let's call it as it is, make no effort to ensure that every school child has a copy of his own local history. After all, how can we know where we are going if we don't know where we came from? Thanks to Robert DeVoe,
Absolutely.
Guy Ellis, and Jolene Hampson.
And I just want to make a statement here. Thank you very much, 12. You're absolutely right, sis. Education is very important to me. The culture, knowledge, and entertainment, the knowledge piece, right? That's what's close to my heart. As well as, the knowledge leads into like the philosophy and the things like that I talk about. But I want to talk about the fact that we as a society, not just the island, not just America and the Western world, but we as a entire human species, we have forgone history for feelings. We've absolutely obliterated any perspective on the wrongs of the past or the rights of the past or good inventions that we've had in the past that may apply to today's world. Like there are so many things that we as people have completely disregarded and thrown by the wayside. Knowledge and education is everything, 12. It absolutely is. And, as I've mentioned here before, I don't have children of my own or that legacy, right, to leave behind. So if within the within the entertainment and fuckery that your boy C.I.P. produces here, I can provide a legacy's worth of some drop of knowledge, I've done my job. We're going to talk about this soon as well, the direction and the pivot of the podcast and how I'm changing my entertainment a little bit. Starting with the relationship show. So anyway, we'll talk about that in a future episode. But yes, knowledge and education and knowledge of history is very important. Let's go.
The history of St. Lucia comes to life with a comprehensive record of St. Lucia's turbulent, colorful, and romantic past. Beginning with the formation of this island, subsequent Amerindian occupation, the pages relive colonialization by France and England,
Yes.
It also explains in detail why St. Lucia was such a coveted gem.
Yes.
As the pages turn, the chapters elucidate the rise and fall of King Sugar, the afflictions of slavery, the feverish hopes and fears of the brigand wars, and eventual emancipation. After 1838, St. Lucia's free blacks were muddled up with indentured labourers from as far as Scotland and India. This vivid recollection also tells the true story of Mother England's contribution to the development of Fair Helen in terms of infrastructure, healthcare, and education. With the blessings of the authors, Untold Stories presents The History of St. Lucia, Part 1, from 50 million years ago to the year 1913. St. Lucians, we must remember, if the past has been an obstacle and a burden, knowledge of the past is the safest and surest emancipation.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you for saying that as well.
Volcanic activity sparked the genesis approximately 50 million years ago, and in a long series of volcanic eruptions, the central, northern, and eastern parts of St. Lucia were created. The initial result was high.
He takes us all the way back to the dinosaurs, you guys.
Over millions of years. These tall peaks were blunted by the erosive effects of rain, wind, and gravity. Boulders slid downhill and filled in the deep ravines, creating the expansive fertile alluvial valleys known as Roseau, Cul-de-Sac, Mabria Valley, Fodor, Marquis, and Trumassé. Erosion also wore down mountain ranges that run along the spine of St. Lucia. The Badlil today peaks a tad over 900 feet above sea level, 26 million years ago. While dinosaurs roamed Jurassic Parks in other parts of the world, St. Lucia had still not reached the shape it is today. A fresh round of volcanic eruption was jolting the island into life, creating tall mountains in the west and center, including Mount Jimmy, Piton Canawi, Mont Pébouche, Mont Tabac, Mont Parasol, Go, and Petit Piton, near Soufrière. The collapse of a huge crater caused an area of land 6 kilometers in diameter to drop, forming a bow-like depression. On the floor of this crater, a series of very violent volcanic explosions subsequently took place, spewing lurid avalanches of gas and ash and ejecting boulders with such force that some landed as far as 13 kilometers away. Gros-Piton and Petit Piton were formed as a result of magma inside the nozzle of two volcanic mountains that cooled slower than the surrounding rock. As erosion wore down the domes and skirts of the mountains, their triangular-shaped cones remained, making them landmarks unique to St. Lucia. Located at 13.85 degrees north, 61 degrees west, Martinique being its closest neighbor north, and St. Vincent being just 40 kilometers away to the south, this 238 square mile rock has an average temperature of 27 degrees Celsius and typical humidity of 75%. A rich fertile ground where flora and fauna abound. Hundreds of indigenous plants and a variety of animals made this land their home. They were not alone. Recorded history, artifacts, and science put the early inhabitants of the island here as early as 200 AD. Originally, these Amerindians made the voyage from South America by canoe, most likely landing at the southern end of the island. As they steered their boats through reefs and calmer waters, they would have seen shores heavily covered with mangroves. Behind them, the land was flat, but in the distance, it rose into jagged mountain peaks from which wide, sparkling, clear rivers ran down to the sea.
Absolutely.
An abundance of fish, crabs, and other shellfish waited impatiently to be caught. Micoud is probably the richest in Amerindian history. Between Micoud and canals, archaeologists have found evidence of nearly 10 settlements. Remains of cooking pits, pots, tools, and ornaments have been discovered in Trumasse and Micoud Bay. For generations, Amerindian people in Ayanola taught their children about the natural resources of the land. They learned how to read the skies and navigate the seas. They also learned tool production.
I put the proper spelling in the chat, you guys. It's Micoud, Micoud. The closed caption is not accurate in regard to a lot of these names. So,
herbal properties of plants, and of course, how to draw. Many of their carvings dot the southern communities even today. Historical records suggest that the Arawaks were constantly traveling up the chain of islands to avoid confrontations with the more aggressive Caribs. So it came as no surprise that recorded history places the Caribs firmly on the island as the stage was set for the greatest transformation in Uranora since the formation of the Pitons.
So the Caribs were the ancients, then moved in the Arawaks, and then their tribes, and then, of course, behind them, the settlers, the colonizers.
In November 1493, Christopher Columbus completed his second successful crossing of the Atlantic Ocean with a fleet of 17 ships carrying 1,500 men. At the break of dawn, the crew spotted an island. The day was Sunday, and they christened it Dominica. Unable to find a safe harbor, the crew sailed northward. Over the next few days, Columbus saw and named Marigalante, Guadeloupe, Montserrat, Nevis, St. Christopher, St. Eustatius, Saba, St. Croix, and the Virgin Islands. Then he proceeded to the Greater Antilles. Columbus did not notice St. Lucia on his boat ride in 1498 either. In 1499, a private voyage was made by Alonso de Ojeda, accompanied by Americo Vespucci and Juan de la Cosa, Columbus's navigator on his previous voyage. In 1500, De la Cosa drew a map which featured St. Lucia under the name El Falcon. Other historians believe.
Wow. That's awesome. I had no idea. And see, too, as you guys know, your boy C.I.P. is a lost son of the island. So I grew up stateside and had limited exposure to the history as a formative adult or even as a young adult. So there's a lot that I'm picking up here and learning and putting together to put a picture together for myself. So that's awesome to look back at the historical names. And yes, Janesta, it's a compilation. The gentleman that pulled all this information together, we thank him very, very much. The channel here is Untold Stories. Actually, I closed the tab by accident. Let's open that up. Untold Stories. And he has a lot of information, stories, and some insight into some things that take place on the island as well. We may dive into some of these untold stories and make that a series here on SOCA Sunday as well. Some are definitely viewer discretion advised, some of these stories. So we may get into that in the future. Some content for SOCA Sundays. As always, it's all about St. Lucia and the Caribbean, you guys. All right, let's go.
His previous voyage. In 1500, De la Cosa drew a map which featured St. Lucia under the name El Falcon.
I want that map. I want a copy of it.
Other historians believe that Columbus spotted St. Lucia on June 15th, 1502, during his fourth and final voyage, when his ship made landfall in Martinico, then traveled northward to Hispaniola. An old persistent legend in St. Lucia holds that before the island appeared on any official map, French sailors were shipwrecked on its shores, and it being the 13th of December, named the island in honor of St. Lucy. The 16th century in the New World is known as the Great Dying. In 1512, Spain specially authorized its conquistadors to capture and enslave the Amerindians in the islands of Los Barbados, Dominica, Martinico, Santa Lucia, San Vicente, La Ascension, and Parato. But the Caribs in Dominica and St. Lucia put up spectacular defense of their land, chasing and defeating Goliath with well-arched poison arrows.
Get him! Hashtag Team Carib.
European ships subsequently landed on the island later that century. It was to lick their wounds, obtain water, wood, or provisions. Ironically, sometimes the Carib would trade with the greatest diplomacy. Other times, they would attack the white men mercilessly.
Viewer discretion is advised.
Occasionally, Spanish vessels loaded with treasure got shipwrecked while navigating the island chain. A legend has it that on the 13th of March, 1597, a storm sank the Spanish galleon, the San Fernando, 2 miles northeast of the southernmost tip of St. Lucia. By the mid-16th century, the Caribs in St. Lucia remained fully in control of their homeland. It was the 12th of April, 1605, when the Olive Blossom sailed from England, loaded with supplies and new settlers, destined for the budding colony of British Guyana. The crew no doubt had dreams of wealth and high adventure in an exotic new land. Instead, what they found was a nightmare tale of friendship, betrayal, and bloodshed. These are the events of the mutiny of the Olive Blossom, as recounted by John Nichol, one of the few survivors.
So see, he's got the compilation of actual stories that remain in our history, Janesta, and he's reenacting all of these to piece together what things looked like.
Shortly after our hopeful departure, the Olive Blossom was blown off course. After 17 miserable weeks at sea, a journey marred by extreme rationing of provisions, hunger, and a series of mutinies, it was St. Lucia that offered us refuge, not Guyana. We were immediately made welcome by the island's Carib inhabitants, who met us bearing gifts of food and tobacco. So gracious was their reception that 67 of us chose to remain here. We purchased some Carib fishing huts at the mouth of the Vieux-Fort River, about 2 kilometers from the main village to the north. The village chief, named Anthony, was once a slave in Margarita. Relations were cordial, but we knew well enough to stay close to our huts, because just as the Caribs knew of the atrocities committed by our fellow Europeans in other islands, so were we well aware of their reputation for ferocity. Antony's men visited us daily to trade food for English hatchets, knives, beads, fish hooks, and thimbles, and other trifles. Things went smoothly for 4 weeks until Antony's brother, a chief named Ogromat, arrived from St. Vincent. Trouble started when Antony claimed that Ogromat planned on bringing 12 canoes loaded with Caribs from St. Vincent to murder us. On the contrary, we found Ogromat to be very kind. He in turn warned that Antony would...
I stopped the closed captioning, you guys. I put it on the screen because the music that he uses is a little bit loud, but the closed captioning is so far off from the words that he's saying that it's non-productive. So I just killed the closed captioning, you guys. Anyway, if you are new, I know there's probably some cloud watchers out there who aren't participating in the chat. No problem. If you're new to the channel, please hit the like. That helps me. I know you probably hate hearing YouTube and content creators say that, but it does help me in the long run, and it helps me share this knowledge with the rest of the world. So please, if you're on mobile, double tap the screen. If you are watching this on a device, scroll up, hit the like, subscribe to the channel for more awesome content. And Nightbot is in the chat, and he'll tell you all about it too. Nightbot's behaving himself this show. So, all right, everybody, let's get back into it.
Would cut our throats and therefore urge us to kill his brother first. Not knowing who to trust, matters deteriorated further when we offended Antoni by confiscating a sword that he had bought from one of us.
Why would you confiscate a sword when you already have fragile relations with the natives and they bought it from you for equal trade? Why would you? Why? It's a powder keg as it is. He clearly stated hubris, humanity. It's never changed. All these years, humans will do human shit all the time.
Then, one day we learned that the Caribs had gold. When asked where they found it, they claimed to have found it on a mountain on the northwest part of St. Lucia, quite possibly Gros Piton. We were very distrustful at first, suspecting an ambush ploy. But for 16 men, the allure of undiscovered riches was too great to pass up. Greed overrode good judgment as they set off on their gold-finding mission in our only boat, no less. That was the last we ever saw of them. Following the disappearances, the once friendly Caribs abruptly stopped visiting our settlement, leaving us hungry and curious and forcing us to visit the Carib village. Upon arrival, the Carib men were nowhere in sight, but the women appeared to be preparing a feast. They refused us food, and so driven by starvation, we helped ourselves to as much as we could carry from their gardens. The next day, Ogramat, his father, and a group of Caribs visited us, bringing us roasted crab. They invited us to the village for more. I was very suspicious.
It's a setup.
But gave in when Ogramat promised me the hammocks I had been begging for. Carrying our guns, we left without hesitation, since the Caribs appeared unarmed except for one sword. And so began our arduous trek from Mola Chic to Anse de Sable. At Anse de Sable, the Caribs struck. Ogramat signaled the attack by embracing my comrade Alexander, while his father struck him down. Then came a volley of arrows out of the wood where the rest of Ogramat's men lay in wait. Too late. We realized that we were trapped. We dropped our guns and pulled out our swords, but this only spurred them on. And so it continued, with Caribs shooting arrow upon arrow at us. Our attack was as futile as our defense. I barely escaped, and by the time the Caribs attacked our camp, my friends and I had the great cannon ready to defend us. They shot burning arrows into the huts and charged under the cover of the thick smoke. They killed 2 of us, but we managed to hide behind the cannon, which we fired into the crowd of Caribs, forcing them to retreat. For the whole week, the attacks continued every day for several hours.
For a week. For a week, the Caribs weren't having it.
With no shelter, no food, and no defense, we finally surrendered and gave up everything we had left in exchange for a canoe and some cloth. Finally, under the cover of darkness on September 26, we, 19 survivors, fled St. Lucia in our Carib canoe, marking the end of the first ever English settlement in the Lesser Antilles.
The Carib said, hell to the no.
In 1627, the King of England granted letters of patent to Jacques, Earl of Calais, giving him ownership of all the Caribbean islands, including St. Lucia, Grenada, Martinique, and Barbados. Colonization was attempted, but not without Amerindian opposition. Constant battles between England, France, and the Caribs were wearing all three combatants down.
Here we go.
So, in 1660, France and England struck up a temporary alliance to once and for all bring the Caribs of the Lesser Antilles under control.
So to bring the natives under control, quote unquote, right? The colonizers teamed up. You got France and England teamed up.
April 6, 1663, 600 Caribs from all over the Lesser Antilles paddled their canoes to Barbados and formally signed over full and absolute title of St. Lucia to Lord Willoughby, who was then in charge of all of the Caribbean islands. After the treaty was signed, 1,100 Englishmen in 5 warships, accompanied by 600 Amerindians in 17 pirogues, left Barbados and proceeded to invade St. Lucia. The French furiously denounced the sale as a hoax, but citing the overwhelming show of force and documents this time around, they quickly surrendered. Nearing the end of the 16th century, this three-way fight for Ayanola was taking its toll on the native population. A census conducted in the early 1700s recorded only 37 Caribs remaining as a society. By 1730, the Caribs were dead. The last mention of them as the rightful owners of the island was December 1719.
Now, this is where I mention paper genocide. Paper genocide. It was proven in Puerto Rico that a lot of the natives fled to the wild, fled to the bush. It has to have been the same on these other islands, except for the ones that they've done the DNA analysis on, like Haiti, where they've had complete and utter replacement due to the forced migration of the slaves. Haiti is completely DNA voided of any native. So that's, I think that has to be reviewed as well. Let's go. Can we talk about the fact that the black man has chains chasing a slave? Can we talk about that? Let's go. Like they're hunting an animal.
Angola, the Cape Verdes, the coast of Guinea and Senegal.
Uh-oh. Angola, Guinea, Senegal, Bantu. Anybody want to talk about the Bantu? Anybody?
All supplied slaves to the French and British traders who traced the coordinates of John Hawkins, the first.
Why I say that is because when the Bantu were spreading across Africa, they were taking over other tribes, and I'm sure it was not civil takeovers at all. So what happened to those tribes? Africa, you got some explaining to do. Cause very interesting. I have to watch it again to take it all in. No problem, sweetheart. No problem at all. Hey, what's up, girl? How you doing? I see you, cuzzo. Yeah, we talking about history. I love to see it. Thank you so much for being here, ladies.
Brit, who carried Africans from Sierra Leone across the Atlantic in 1562 in what became known as the Middle Passage. It is estimated that between the years 1451 and 1879, a total of 9,566,100 enslaved Africans reached the Caribbean and the Americas alive. Needless to say, countless perished. However, slavery did not take real hold in St. Lucia until the late 1720s. By 1730, there were 463 people living in St. Lucia, including 175 slaves.
Now, these statistics, I believe he has gained these statistics from the St. Lucian records. So this actually I only watched about halfway through this. And when he started speaking the statistics of how many slaves arrived on the shores of St. Lucia, this is when my ears perked up because he compiled all of this data from multiple sources. So I'm guessing that these were numbers that we kept on record. This is where information and the historical genocide, paper genocide here stateside, we don't have people spewing these numbers freely. There are records, but everyone isn't putting this whole thing together. Not that I've seen. There are people that talk about the strife and the struggle, but they don't put the analysis fully together.
Did not take real hold in St. Lucia until the late 1720s. By 1730.
Cuz I knew it. What have I been... Ever since we started talking last week about the Tainos and the Northern Caribbean, I mentioned the Bantu movement and the fact that they destroyed and took over so much of that coast of Africa and so much down the middle. And boom, here we go. Cuz runs her ancestry, and what do we find? Bantu. Telling you, it was them. Bantu Africa, you got some splaining to do.
There were 463 people living in St. Lucia, including 175 slaves. Between 1799 and 1801, 238 slaves were imported into St. Lucia from Grenada, Martinique, and St. Vincent. St. Lucian planters were also being supplied by Bajan slave wholesalers. Slaves brought in fresh from Africa were referred to as saltwater slaves, whereas those born in the Caribbean were called Creoles. 1/3 of all new slaves died within the first.
So there's a new term for you, the saltwater slaves versus the Creole, which were the ones that were raised up on the island. And I'm sure were mixed as well.
Year. New arrivals were put to work in the fields and in the sugar factories. Creoles were usually imported from islands with a longer tradition of sugar production. Slaves were considered movable objects, and as such, they could be mortgaged, pawned, or sold. They themselves could not own property. Those from different plantations could not congregate without prior authorization. They could not treat disease, with the exception of snake bites. They were strictly forbidden to buy or sell anything and could not carry weapons, nor could they act as witnesses in any legal proceedings. From the 1770s onward, not even human suffering was allowed to stand in the way of King Sugar. The sweetness of the crop could not disguise the bitterness of the human casualties.
And again, sugar. What did we talk about with the Tainos after the Taino episode when we started talking about Puerto Rico and how they took over Puerto Rico? What was it all for? Sugar, the sugar empire.
The sweetness of the crop could not disguise the bitterness of the human casualties it dragged in its wake. As the amount of land on the sugar expanded, so did the slave population. Between 1772 and 1789, more than 5,000 new slaves were imported. By that time.
Yeah, Earl, this is the story of my people. And as mentioned, I don't know if you caught, my cousin is in the chat as well. She ran DNA ancestry, and we ran back to the Bantu people from her side. It's very, very close to all of us, my friend. Absolutely. In your case, you say here your grandmother was a slave. Your great-grandmother was born in 1905, sharecropper in Arkansas. Yep.
The island's population stood at 19,230. Of these, 16...
You know, it's funny that even with the ability to be a sharecropper, your great-grandmother got way more grace than any of these people from the islands ever got. And Puerto Rico's still going through it. Still going through it. Colonization, essentially. It sounds like they're part of America. They really are not. It's disastrous.
1,003 were slaves, and there were 44 sugar plantations, indicated by the red dots on this map.
Look at that.
During this period of economic development, Mother Nature would throw 2 curveballs at Helen, which threatened to knock her lights out. In 1776, the Soufrière volcano erupts with cataclysmic fury. 1780, tectonic plates collide, causing a massive earthquake on the island. But the worst was yet to come. On the evening of October 10th, 1780, the slaves and their masters stood helpless as the island took a pounding for 36 hours straight from the most powerful hurricane in St. Lucia's recorded history. Approximately 800 lives were lost, and only 2 houses remain standing in Castries. While slaves and their masters tried to make sense of the melee, hundreds of captive Africans made a dash for freedom.
Yep.
This, in addition to the unrest that had resulted from the British takeover 2 years earlier, left the mostly French planters at their wits' end.
Yep.
The wind of change ruffled the earth and sparked life into an ember of hope that was so strong, the heady scent galvanized irreversible insurgents. The revolt of 1790 in Martinique was the precursor of the actions which followed in St. Lucia. For whatever reason, slaves in Soufrière belonging to Monsieur Vert convinced themselves that their counterparts in Martinique had been set free. They revolted and demanded their own freedom. This rebellion was short-lived as a number of the ringleaders were seized and executed. They were beheaded, and their heads were strung up at prominent locations in the area. In St. Lucia, law and order was deteriorating rapidly. August 23rd, 1792 saw another violent uprising among the slaves in Soufrière. This too was short-lived, but it was the
Soufrière. Y'all just revolt. Soufrière got the spirit. They said, to hell with this. Yo, Soufrière, salute.
catalyst for the subsequent actions taken by the slaves island-wide. They began abandoning the estates and leaving the crops to wither. Governor de Guimard, realizing that his authority and power had eroded, left the island and fled to Martinique. Brimstone, thunder, hurricane, earthquake. Nothing deterred the conquest for sweet St. Lucie. In 1781, France tried to reconquer St. Lucia, but their invasion of Rosalie was ill-advised. The British opened fire from here at Pigeon Island before the French could even disembark. Pigeon Island proved to be a strategic gold mine, and it was from here in March 1782 that Admiral Rodney spotted the French fleet floating from Fort Royal in Martinique. Rodney gave chase with his British squadrons, and on the 12th of April, he intercepted the fleet. Admiral Rodney's army defeated the French Navy, including his flagship, the Ville de Paris, the largest warship in the world at the time. But his victory celebration was short-lived. By September 1783, the Treaty of Versailles was signed, and once again, the island became the property of France. In 1785, the city once known as Carénage was renamed Castries in honor of Charles Eugene Gabriel de la Croix, Marquis de Castries. The European colonial powers sought to gain a foothold in the Caribbean and to establish settlements in the islands of the archipelago. The British led the pack by settling in St. Kitts in 1623, Barbados 1627, Antigua, Nevis, and Montserrat in 1636. The French, not to be outdone, nipped at the heels of the English and colonized part of St. Kitts in 1627.
French can never sit the fuck down.
In 1632, and Martinique and Guadeloupe in 1635.
Well, none of these colonizers
The
did.
island of St. Lucia was a coveted gem, which was sought after by the British and the French colonial powers. While the majority of the other islands were seized to be developed for their agricultural output, St. Lucia was desired for its strategic location. For the English, it would act as a military buffer to protect Barbados, and for the French, it would offer the same kind of protection for Martinique against the English. Conflict in and around the island was exacerbated by the wars which were fought by the English and French that began in Europe and spilled over in the Caribbean.
Yep.
A watershed event in modern European history, the French Revolution, began in 1789 and ended in the late 1790s with the ascent of Napoleon Bonaparte. During this period, French citizens raised and redesigned their country's political landscape, uprooting century-old institutions as absolute monarchy and the feudal system. Although it failed to achieve all its goals, and at times degenerated into a chaotic bloodbath, the movement played a critical role in shaping modern nations by showing the world the power inherent in the will of the people. As in France, in Haiti, there were many different groups of people, all with conflicting interests. Also, as in France, in Haiti, the oppressed groups, notably the free colored people and the slaves, fought both peacefully and violently against the tyranny of their government of the laws restricting fundamental human rights and liberties. Beginning a little earlier than the Haitian Revolution, the revolution in France profoundly affected the political and social atmosphere in France's colonies in the Caribbean.
Yep.
The Haitian Revolution benefited greatly from the Enlightenment ideas of progress and freedom, the latter of which was consummated by the National Assembly in the Declaration of the Rights of the Man and of the Citizen. The revolutionary government in France abolished slavery in all French colonies in 1794. These events scared Mother England, and certainly she was not about to allow her colonies to be infected by this revolutionary virus. Therefore, the stakes could not be higher, and victory had to be hers at any cost.
Here we go. 7 times British, 7 times French. St. Lucia was the battlefield.
The romance of the French was no match for the rivalry and sheer determination of the British in their unrelenting conquest for sweet Eleonora. By January 1794, they were at it again in what was dubbed the War of the Brigands. Governor de Richard of France wanted to arm St. Lucia's blacks so they could help defend the island, but the remaining white planters would have none of it. Aware of an imminent English invasion, the National Convention in Paris finally bit the bullet and abolished the enslavement of all Negro people in its colonies. It had taken years, but finally, France was making liberté, égalité, fraternité count for its slaves as well. In a cruel stroke of irony, by the time the decree reached St. Lucia, the island had already been recaptured by the British. Several other battles ensued, with England putting up formidable defense in some battles and conceding defeat in others. It is said that at one point, St. Lucia was considered so valuable that the British were willing to trade all of Canada for St. Lucia.
Isn't that crazy? The British would have traded all of Canada for St. Lucia because of its strategic value and riches. Look at this. 1700, the British claim it back. (1718), the island is granted to Marshal Count d'Estrées by Regent. 1722, granted to a new person in England. 1732, treaty, and it's declared neutral. 1744, French. 1756, British. This is ridiculous. Wow.
May 1814, the Peace of Paris Treaty is signed, and the island officially, and for the final time, becomes British.
Wow.
The battle for Helene lasted well over 120 years. This constant tug of war gave rise to a special blend of French words and the seasoning of English pronunciations. The result? The birth of the Creole language.
All of that turmoil being tossed between those two countries, the natives that were bred into the slaves, that were bred into the colonizers, the mix of all the individuals, boom, here comes the language, the Creole. And
June,
the culture.
1803, the General Post Office opened up. Amidst this good tide, a spell of bad luck was about to hit the land of Ghana. On the 15th of October, 1805, a fire raged through Castries, leaving 200 houses in ashes. It was further compounded by the fact that all the structures were wooden and there was no fire brigade. April 6, 1813, fire tore through the town once again. In May 1813, the Peace of Paris Treaty was signed and the island officially becomes British. But this could not deter the string of misfortunes ahead. December 1816, an earthquake rattled and rolled St. Lucia's foundation. Then, less than a year later, disaster came in the form of wind and rain, which completely destroyed Government House, then located on Brazil Street. 46 people perished, including the governor. A year later, Government House at Mont Fortune was constructed. At the time, the island's population stood at 18,595. Overall, The first few decades of the 19th century can best be described as a period of uneasy apprehension. The smell of freedom was so close it was intoxicating. The fear that a captive supply of labor would soon be set free spurred the slave drivers to squeeze every ounce of forced labor from black brows. This only fueled more uprisings and brazen marriage attempts. In June 1829, planters reported that in various parts of the island, gangs of runaway slaves were preparing to attack the estates. While fear gripped the whites, the period saw a steady flow of runaway slaves from Martinique, lured by the promise of freedom in St. Lucia. They risked it all and paddled to St. Lucia by the hundreds. But alas, freedom. When the sun set on the evening of July 31st, 1834, anxiety was thick in the air. The word on every Negro's lips was freedom. A special midnight mass was held. 13,285 men, women, and children thanked the Lord for setting them free from slavery at long last. In an all-too-familiar paradoxical twist, the newly liberated blacks were forced to work 40 hours per week of unpaid labor to their former masters. It was called the apprenticeship period. Apprenticeship gave planters a first-hand taste of what full emancipation would bring. Citing a
like sharecropping,
gloomy financial forecast, many planters packed up. To appease the slave owners and to quell opposition to emancipation, Britain provided £20 million as compensation, not to the blacks, but rather to their enslavers.
Right.
In St. Lucia, planters received a total of £342,155 for their slaves. The rationale behind this reparation was that Britain had originally allowed the system of slavery to exist, thereby encouraging planters to invest their monies to buy and maintain slaves. Now that the British government had changed its mind and laws on the issue, it was effectively confiscating capital investment.
Right.
Therefore, the planters had to be repaid. With the full abolition of slavery in 1838 inevitably ahead of them, planters everywhere in the West Indies began to look for another source of cheap, reliable labor to work their estates. They found this in Southeast Asia.
There we go.
Between 1845 and 1917, hundreds of thousands of indentured workers sailed from India to the Caribbean. Most went to Guyana, Trinidad, and Jamaica, but some 6,000 set foot on shore in St. Lucia.
People have wondered why you have East Indian people in the Caribbean. Now you know. They came over to replace the slaves.
Just over 1,600 people arrived here between...
It was always about a colonizer's plan, and it never changes. You wipe out the natives, you bring in the Africans revolt, you bring in the East Indians, and so forth and so on.
1856 and 1865, and another 4,427 Indians sailed to St. Lucia between 1878 and 1893. The labor contracts under which East Indians worked varied, but as a rule, they were bound to work on a designated estate for 5 years in return for a wage, housing, clothing, food, and medical care. After 5 years,
a whole lot more than the slaves prior to them got, right?
They could choose between owning 10 acres of land or £10 sterling, or they could, after a further 5 or 10 years of industrial residence, get free passage back to India. When the sun rose...
That was like a VIP slave treatment, y'all.
...on August 1st, 1838, the atmosphere seemed surreal. Finally, the much-anticipated day had arrived. No more slavery, no more apprenticeship, just freedom.
Let's go. We made it.
Full emancipation came on August 1st, 1838. This memorable day passed without upheaval and disruptions feared by the authorities. 1838 was also the year the Palladium and the St. Lucia Free Press rolled out. In 1827, in anticipation of post-emancipation lawlessness, Mother England financed the construction of Her Majesty's prisons in St. Lucia. It was built to accommodate 60 prisoners and was located on Bridge Street in Castries. This photograph from the year 1900 shows a police officer in colonial uniform guarding the bridge, with police headquarters and the Royal Jail in the background. The Royal St. Lucia Police Force was established in 1843, only 5 years after the formation of the very first law enforcement department as we know them in London initially.
That's great. That is a good piece of history, you guys. 5 years after the very first police force was ever formed, St. Lucia got theirs. That's awesome. Telling you, history is awesome.
The force was headed by an inspector who was assisted by 3 sergeants and 24 corporals and constables. The inspector had to perform the confusing duty of magistrate by taking depositions in criminal cases and acting as a prosecutor in court. Confusing, funny, but true. 1839 again, the island was rocked by 2 powerful earthquakes in January and September respectively. There was 1 confirmed death, but it would be yellow fever that would kill 13 people that year. As free men of African origin began influencing the very fabric of social structure in St. Lucia, the landscape of the town began to evolve. By 1844, Castries was bound on the north by a bay and Sanssouci, on the east by Chaussee Road, and on the west by the harbour. There were 400 houses and 4,000 residents. Remember, the Castries harbour was originally a volcanic crater which flooded when its western walls collapsed. The Castries Wharf was built to capitalize on the emerging coal industry. Ships needed bituminous coal to fuel their engines. With this new facility, Castries became one of the few ports in the region with deep water landing facilities. The town's ambitions was reflected in St. Lucia's new crest, which used the motto, "A safe harbour for ships." Construction of the minor basilica commenced in 1827, but petered out because of lack of funds. In January 1834, the cornerstone was laid after numerous delays. The walls were completed a year later, and after a problem with the roof was resolved, the church was blessed and dedicated to St. Flora on May 12, 1836. Another new addition was the Anglican Church. The first stone was laid in 1830 and construction was completed 2 years later. It could accommodate 200 worshippers comfortably. In 1843, the Bishop of Barbados christened the building in the name of the Holy Trinity. In 1844, St. Lucia had 4 main roads. The first extended from Castries to Soufrière along the west coast and from there onto Vieux-Fort, covering a distance of 60 miles. The second road ran 45 miles from Castries across what was then the Trace, Barra.
You mean to tell me they still haven't fixed this road since the 1800s? St. Lucia, what are you doing?
And the Bamboo to Dennery on the east coast. This round the island
if you know, you
was
know.
known as the Chimère Royale. The third road was 9 miles, running from Castries to the village of Grosley. A fourth road diverged from the Castries-Grosley Road at Choc, turning east across the northern tip of the island, all the way to...
When they add the Micoud Highway? When they add that?
Grandance. While new infrastructural changes were occurring with a trickle of British pounds, the healthcare department was hemorrhaging. But the cholera epidemic in 1854 would highlight the degree to which Queen Victoria was neglecting her faithful subjects. When cholera visited in the mid-19th century, it killed 100...
Hey, Dan Cunningham, how you doing, bro? We're doing history of my island, my people. We're up to the early 1900s.
150,000 people in the Caribbean. From July to November 1854, cholera swept through St. Lucia, killing an estimated 1,400 people, the majority of them from Soufrière. At the time, the colonial hospital was perched here at Fiji.
It's good, Ty.
In 1884, it was burned to the ground. and the new hospital was built at a whopping cost of £8,686. On June 21st, 1887, it was christened Victoria Hospital in commemoration of the Golden Jubilee of Queen Victoria. The precise origin of the La Rose and La Marguerite flower festivals is unknown. They were conceived during the period of slavery and are floral societies in which some members of St. Lucian community divided themselves. Both groups have a king and queen as the head and other dignitaries patterned upon the socio-economic structure of colonial society, such as judges, policemen, soldiers, and nurses, roles which were far beyond the real aspiration of the folk population in ordinary life. August 30th was designated as La Rose and October 17th as La Marguerite. On that day, all members dressed up in the fineries of their respective roles marched to the church for service, preceded by their parade through the streets. The Catholic Church, in spite of the occasional good relation, at various times opposed the societies because of extravagance, quarreling between the two groups, and the rioting that engendered them. In 1860, both flower festivals were excommunicated from the Catholic Church. While they struggled to maintain their standards, folk dancers in St. Lucia always remained 2 steps ahead.
You're not going to stop us from partying in church. The church can say whatever they want.
Between 1845 and 1850, 4% of all children were enrolled in schools. By 1896, nearly half a century after emancipation, Helen had 46,671 children and an estimated 10,000 of school age. There were 36 schools, but only 2,256 pupils attended school regularly. To make matters worse, few children understood English before reaching Standard 4, despite the fact that they were being taught in English. Knowledge of the language was...
Yeah, here we go with the division of the language and how things got watered down and the Creole went away. And now they're, like I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, they're bringing it back into the schools, reintroducing it.
Confined to a few simple words of command. Out of school, children heard and spoke nothing but Creole.
Right.
It is noteworthy that the French language was only officially abolished in 1838. A population census in 1881 recorded 38,551 inhabitants of St. Lucia. Unemployment was at an all-time high, but with commencement of earthworks on the Panama Canal in 1882, the unemployment tide was about to subside. Between 1882 and 1886, 30 to 40% of all St. Lucian adult men moved to Panama.
30 30% of all working age Lucian men, 30% of the workforce went to help dig out the Panama Canal.
Financially, the mass emigration clearly benefited the island. However, 6 years after the boom, the demise came with the collapse of the French company who were undertaking the project, and 20,000 West Indians became stranded in Panama. About 1/3 of all St. Lucian migrants never saw sweet St. Lucie again.
They were trapped in Panama.
Ever-increasing number of seagoing vessels, St. Lucia's prime location and sheltered bay seemed ideal for storing and selling coal to passing steamships as fuel. Soon, huge piles of coal brought in from Britain and the United States dominated the skyline. The transfer to and from ships was done by women porters who acrobatically balanced 100-pound buckets on their head. For each load, they earned half a penny during the day and a whole penny on the night shift. Nearing the end of the 1800s, unemployment was further reduced with the building of extra military barracks on the Mon. And here at VG in 1896, doubling the capacity of the garrisons to 700 men. But by the middle of 1899, building works drew to a close, unskilled laborers were laid off, and misery seemed set to return. To everyone's relief, in August 1900, new military works were announced, the biggest of them being the construction of military tramways from Castries to Mont Fortune. The end of the 19th century was pregnant with developmental changes in all facets. 1879 saw the establishment of the Castries Fire Brigade. The Voice newspaper was launched on January 24th, 1885. But the headlines and stories which ran in this periodical did not reflect the everyday stories of St. Lucian society. Instead, it was merely related information passed on by our colonial masters. There was no news from Castries, Monrepo, or even Choiseul. On March 17, 1885, a new Windward Island government was established, which comprised St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Grenada, and Tobago. On the 1st of January, 1893, the Place des Armes was formally renamed Columbus Square. The 6th of August, 1894, the Castries Market is officially opened. A severe cyclone swept through St. Lucia on the 10th to the 11th of September, 1898. The island took a beating. The last year in the century was spent nursing Helen's economy and infrastructure. 1901 was an unusually quiet year. The 4 Marshall lands were purchased to create recreational grounds. In 1902, St. Lucia's 49,883 residents were spared as the volcanoes in St. Vincent and Martinique erupted with terrifying violence. The Mount Pelee eruption was dubbed the worst volcanic disaster of the 20th century. 30,000 persons perished.
Wow.
Louis-Auguste Sipari was one of the 3 survivors. Although St. Lucia was between 2 fires, its solfatera did not come to life. October 1903, a new system of lighting was inaugurated. The first Kitson light was installed and lit on Brazil Street. Strikes, riots, looting and shooting characterized the second quarter of 1907. Coal carriers laid down their baskets. Violence escalated in Castries, Roseau, and Dennery. Police killed 7 persons, while 37 others were left nursing wounds. This was the same year that income tax was introduced, and 3 powerful earthquakes shook for Helen.
Wow.
Mother Earth would not let up, as Helen was jolted once again in May and June of 1908. A census taken in 1911 recorded the population at 48,637. On the 22nd of June that year, the coronation of King George V was celebrated. By 1913, Castries had pipe-borne water, and it was the year that the very first car was imported into St. Lucia by George Barnard. Join us in part 2 of Untold Stories, the history of St. Lucia, as we review the past 100 years from 1913 to 2013. World War I, 26 St. Lucians perish as the HMS Good Hope is sunk. The Ravin Poisson disaster, the Great Depression, spectacular strikes orchestrated by political wannabes, adult suffrage, the formation of the St. Lucia Labour Party, and the father of the nation's rise to power. St. Lucia mourns the death of King Sugar. No trip down memory lane would be complete if we did not explain the tumultuous late 70s and early 80s. Prisoners escaped from jail with little effort. Hurricane Allen, Tropical Storm Debbie, and Hurricane Thomas decimate St. Lucia. The banana industry goes from riches to rags. Our Nobel Prize winners place us on the map of intellectual history. A new SLP savior brings a landslide victory. Helen rekindles her love for an 80-year-old politician. A visa gets revoked. 17 people die in a horrific vehicular crash. And the dreaded 3-letter word makes history.
VAT tax. Ladies and gentlemen, salute to our cousin from the motherland, Untold Stories. Salute to him for putting together that beautiful, beautiful part 1 of the history of our island. And thank you to those of you who are here in the audience and have stayed around to watch that. That was awesome. That was awesome. DJ Kai, let's go. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, that was amazing. That was absolutely amazing. And that's what I intended to bring to you today, was that history. From the beginning of time, no less. He went all the way back to the dinosaurs. I mean, this was absolutely awesome. I think that was very, very well done. And if I can locate part 2, we will do part 2 from him. I went and looked and couldn't find it immediately, so I have to go through his content and find part 2 for us. But yes, definitely. Applause to him. Cheers, everybody. I still have some coffee left. But yes, I want to thank you all for being here this Sunday. A-Team, Cuzzo, Jenny, Daniel Cunningham. My bad, bro. A-Team, Ty Pro. Who else we got out here? 12, you still here, sis? Earl. I think Joan stepped out earlier. Team Replay, those of you who caught the show late, go back. Start from the beginning. As always, there is good entertainment over here. To the gents, you'll like the opening montage, as always. There's a little bit for us. And more than anything, history. More than anything, history. I think we'll see. We'll see what information and what history and what culture your boy C.I.P. picks up over the week. I have a busy week, so I might not do a midweek show. Cuzzo, she says, thanks. I learned a lot and it's put in perspective the results from the ancestry. Thank you, Cuzzo. Absolutely, girl. Absolutely. I'm telling you, cuz I'm the lost. I'm a lost son. There was so much that I don't know. There was so much that, even in my young age of 50, I'm still learning. Absolutely. Absolutely. Esther, how are you? Yes. Thanks very much for the history lesson. Oh, you're welcome, A-Team. You're welcome. That's why I'm here. Like I said, this is my hobby. This is what I like to do. And if I can provide my audience with a little bit of legacy and some longevity, right? Something that's going to stick around when I'm gone, that provides perspective, and I bring forth things that you would never have sought out to learn yourselves. Veronica, what's up, Cuzzo? Yeah, I think so. I'm going to look for part 2 as well. Absolutely. So everyone, I hate to do it, but your boy CIP has to get something in his stomach. I need some nutrition. And I have a lot of paperwork to do outside of the hobby, right? I thoroughly enjoyed this time that we shared together today. And as always, let me pull this up. I always have wise words to close out on. All right. DJ Kai, I appreciate you, brother, but we're going to bring you back in just a moment. My friends, my family, my subscribers, everyone that was here, thank you so much. Nothing is true. Remember, nothing is true and everything is permitted. Nothing in life is true until you seek the knowledge for yourself. Don't run life on feelings, run life on facts. The world around us is not an absolute reality. Reality is subjective to what we choose to explore in this vast world, right? Your boy C.I.P. is here to bring these things to you and make it simple, right? But what you limit yourself to and experience is your own responsibility. It's up to you. Your destiny, your choices are yours alone. To everyone that was here this evening, have a great evening. Mwah. I love you all. Good night. DJ Kai, let's go.
Let me see. Nice man can keep your interest. Come with flowers and they get dismissed. You have to handle the business proper. Oh Lord. Tell you what she like. Tell you what she like. She was some action in she life.
CDT, salute, brother.
Tell you what she like. Tell you what she like. She was the roughness in she life. And when I put down the rock, watch out she face light up. Boy, no sweetness. Like she weakness, yeah. No feelings, just walk it up like your meanness. No sweetness, like she weakness. I would never tell a lie to you, cause I believe in the truth, and I just wanna live good. I don't want no dirty secrets fighting me and you, boy. I could only drive one car at a time, but I still want to. Cause everything is balance. Right through life, what we want is balance. To be a good wife, what you need is balance. Bend down, touch your toe and balance. Go low and balance. Love comes from a place where we don't get jealous, and we don't live like no dream sellers. I say we keeping it real, I'm telling you like it is.
Play it.
I'll be there for you with anything you're facing. I'll be your sunlight when it's raining. Stay together and we going places.